All right. Thanks to everyone for coming today. Hello and welcome to the NIIMBL bioLOGIC RFI listening session and office hours. I am Kathie Young, Workforce and Talent Program Engagement Manager at NIIMBL. I do have a couple folks on the line today who I'd like to have introduce themselves as they will be presenting and helping with today's session.
Hey, so John Balchunas, I am NIIMBL's Workforce Director. Happy to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Argoe. I'm a Workforce and Talent Program Engagement Manager here at NIIMBL. It's nice to see you.
Awesome. Thanks very much. So just a few logistics for everyone as we get ready to talk about the NIIMBL bioLOGIC RFI. And if we can switch slides, I will speak to those logistics. So just a few things, as we mentioned at the top, we are recording this webinar to facilitate easy sharing with organizations who are unable to attend this listening session. We do ask that everyone hold their questions till the end just to facilitate easy recording, but definitely feel free to add those questions into the chat and then we'll have time to speak at the end. And we do want to mention that slides and recording will be made available after the webinar is complete. Those will be posted to our NIIMBL portal. So I'm going to hand it over to John and he will speak now just a little bit about the RFI.
Yeah, so I mean, well, just at a very high level, we'll get into more detail on NIIMBL bioLOGIC and what NIIMBL bioLOGIC is. But I just wanted to kind of level set and say this is around a request for information. So just keep in mind there is not funding tied to this specific request, but this is basically the first step by which we gather the information in order to be able to put together a request for with funding attached. And so, long story short, and we'll get into the weeds on this, but we developed NIIMBL bioLOGIC a number of years ago in partnership with NextFlex, one of our sister institutes within the Manufacturing USA network. The curriculum is modeled after a curriculum that they developed called Flex Factor, and this is sort of our version of it. We'll kind of talk more about in the weeds, but we are really just trying to collect ideas from the membership in terms of, if you had access to this curriculum, how would you roll it out? How could you pilot it? How much would it cost you to pilot it? Who would you partner with? That kind of thing, just to gauge appetite, gauge feasibility, and see how we might best structure a request for applications in the future to throw some funding out into the community to make this happen. So really, again, this is focused on collecting, information, ideas, and suggestions from the membership, without requiring detailed proposals. So it's really just trying to get your big picture thoughts. And with that, Kathie, I will turn it back to you. And maybe the last thing I'll say. Well, never mind. I'll come back to that.
Okay, sounds good, John. And just as a note, I'm seeing that my internet connection is having a bit of difficulty. So if for some reason I freeze or hitch, feel free to take it up because
Okay.
I don't know when it'll pop back in. But did want to just speak now a little bit to the background of Biologic and what it is. So kind of in a nutshell, it is a project-based learning program for high school students developed by NIIMBL that focuses on three pillars: engagement with advanced technologies, familiarization with the principles of entrepreneurship, and exposure to education and career pathways that lead into the advanced manufacturing sector. Essentially, it's designed around a student-led design thinking approach that allows participants to focus on a problem that holds a real meaning for them, and that they can apply what they've learned about that technology and entrepreneurship to a real-world challenge. As John mentioned, the purpose of this RFI is to gauge interest and gather insights that will shape the scope of a future request for applications for NIIMBL bioLOGIC. And we do invite submissions from interested parties to share information on potential solutions that you might have come up with or created for a NIIMBL bioLOGIC implementation. But it is not, this current RFI is not a funding opportunity. Next slide. So what are the goals of Biologic? Biologic wants to inform, attract, inspire, and potentially recruit students into the next generation workforce. And how does it accomplish that? Well, through the elements of Biologic that are mentioned here and on the prior slide. So a career readiness workshop, we do ask, is done. A kickoff and problem identification, students are oriented to the program and identify a healthcare problem or challenge they want to focus on. So they develop something they want to, treat, prevent, or cure, and they do that through creating a gene therapy, cell therapy, a mAb, or maybe a vaccine. There is an industry day, which includes a tour, classroom visit, or virtual visit, a college day, which does the same. The students create a business model where, as a group, they develop this business model around their healthcare problem. They develop a pitch. And then also there is a final pitch day where they present to an industry panel and academics. Next slide. So just a bit of background about Biologic. Just a brief history of the program, as John talked about its creation through our sister institute, NextFlex. We created the curriculum for it. NC Biotech, the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, piloted Biologic for us, and they had several successful pilot classes in North Carolina, and they continue to run Biologic to this day. They've had several very successful implementations of the program, more than 650 students served in 10 plus schools. NIIMBL, we ourselves have implemented a couple classes of Biologic in Delaware at Charter School of Wilmington. We did that in 2024, where we served 92 students. Kind of current state of Biologic, Delaware Technical Community College just ran a Biologic for us as part of their Upward Bound program over the summer in June, and they were able to serve 80 students across 20 schools in Delaware. That was fantastic. We love the fact that that was able to get done. And then, of course, the Biologic RFI release that we are going through right now. And future state of Biologic is whatever is derived out of this RFI. And of course, we are continuing the regional implementations of Biologic in North Carolina and in Delaware. Again, just kind of a timeline outlining the history of Biologic. It was born 5 years ago out of the partnership with our sister institute, NextFlex, back in 2020. We had to have the curriculum developed, and determine partners. So NC Biotech was kind of found, or we piloted and partnered with them in 2021. The content was finalized in 2022. NC Biotech completed the pilot for us in 2023. They continued to implement in 2024, and we ran our 2 implementations, and that brings us to 2025 right now, where we were able to complete the Biologic at Delaware Technical Community College, and of course, determining the next steps of Biologic based on this RFI. We also included a couple great pictures on this slide of some of the different implementations of Biologic. We've had implementations of Biologic that have included on the final pitch day, not just PowerPoint presentations, but also posters. And you can see some of the groups here of students doing either a PowerPoint presentation or their posters in various implementations of Biologic. So just some great shots there of the students. I'm going to hand it back over to John now so he can talk through some of through the 4 phases of Biologic.
Yeah, and I'm going to bounce. So I'll start with these slides, and then I'm going to go probably a quick spin through the student workbook. And I think we'll get back to this, I think, after I kind of talk through the program a little bit, and I think it's probably on a later slide. Some of this material is made available to you guys that are interested in the RFI. So I think on the website, you can get access to the program manager's playbook and the teacher workbook, and you can request a copy of the student workbook. It's going to feel a little bit clunky that you've got to request it and we're going to mail it. It is, honestly, we're just trying to keep the curriculum itself under lock and key, recognizing that it is still, proprietary confidential curriculum. This isn't putting that curriculum out there. We're not trying to get it out there. And so we're basically printing it on paper that is copy protected, just trying to add some level of protection to that curriculum, because we don't want this to end up in high schools without our knowing. The other thing fundamentally that I'll just say about Biologic, it's not about getting the science right. And so I think what's been kind of cool to watch the classrooms where this has been implemented to date, it's a range of, science teachers. Most of them are passionate educators, but they're not necessarily in the weeds and have tons of subject matter expert in biopharmaceuticals or biologics or biomanufacturing. I don't think that's necessarily critical. It helps for sure, but it's not really about getting the science right. We've seen this program run successfully with, I'd say, relatively challenged students that are, or I'd say just instructionally challenged students that are new to life sciences completely. And they're coming up with some really cool projects. We're seeing this to run in AG classrooms or AP classrooms, and they're coming up with very high level projects, but it's not about getting the science right. It's really the students going through the motions of conceptualizing a product, and that's going to meet a need, and basically pitching it to industry is really what it boils down to. And so the materials that are available on the website that you can download are basically the coordination aspect of this. And basically what I can kind of step through briefly is the program itself, or basically the student piece and what the students are actually doing. And so at the beginning of the program, the students are identifying a problem. They're then basically getting a feel of industry, whether that's through a facility tour, whether that's, and that a facility tour we use loosely. It could be companies coming to the classroom. It could be the students visiting, a company. It could be a virtual thing. We've seen it done in a number of different ways. But the students are then basically using that knowledge, using those contacts with industry, and using that problem statement to conceptualize a solution. And that solution's in the context of a biologic, it's a monoclonal antibody, it's a vaccine, it's a cell therapy, it's a gene therapy. It's sort of obviously our mission space. It's kind of where we try and steer the students. If you can go to the next slide. They're then a big piece of this is also exposing them to post-secondary options. And so we build into the program a college day where students are touring, whether it's a community college or university, setting where they could continue their education. We're open to all sorts of different models in terms of how that might look. But then basically the students are developing a business model, they're developing a pitch, and they're pitching it. I'm going to share my screen briefly just to kind of give you a feel for what the workbook looks like from the student's perspective. This is the other thing to keep in mind is this is a team-based project, and so the students are working in teams. I've seen, so these are some, I'm going to, breeze through the student workbook pretty quickly just to give you a feel for it. But in some cases, students are using the workbook. In some cases, they're using the workbook as a guide. In some cases, they're filling it out. It really depends on the classroom and how it's implemented. I think the other thing that I've really been kind of humbled by in rolling this out, as a coordinator of the program, which is largely what we're looking for our members to do, is to kind of coordinate the implementation, bring the right partners together. There's a lot of weeds in doing that. What's not involved necessarily is actually being in the classroom teaching this. And one of the things that we've actually been pretty humbled by is that high school teachers know how to teach, and they know how to teach well. And in most cases, we've been able to hand the curriculum to them, or our partners have been able to hand the curriculum over to really passionate teachers, and they can pick it up and run with it. But we do want to kind of give you a feel for what's in there. And so my point here is not for you guys to make sense of this and really understand it, but just to get a feel for what the flavor is. So, as we noted in the beginning of the curriculum, the students are really just identifying a problem they want to solve, whether that's, a problem related to rheumatology, substance abuse, urology, women's health, oncology, the whole nine yards. So they pick a therapeutic area. They spend some time identifying what that problem is, how many people in the world have that problem, what kind of treatments are out there for the problem, and really trying to, again, research it and quantify it and get some data behind what it is that they're trying to solve in the first place. Quantifying it is a big piece. It feeds into clinical trials and the whole nine yards for them to understand, is this some rare disease that only impacts 50 people worldwide, or is this something that impacts nearly everybody? And that drives clinical trials, it drives funding, it drives treatments, the whole nine yards. They're then getting into the development process, and basically what the curriculum is doing is more or less kind of stepping them through the overall development timeline from R&D into commercialization. And so they are starting off thinking about, in terms of R&D, what does their product look like? Is it a monoclonal antibody? Is it a vaccine? Are they trying to heal? Are they trying to, cure and prevent this? Or are they trying to treat it? How are they approaching this? What's the mechanism of action? And I think we've really been kind of amazed that students can do some Googling, use AI, use tools that are out there, and come up with some pretty impressive solutions. They're then kind of going through process development and kind of saying, okay, if I'm making a monoclonal antibody, what would my upstream process look like? What would my downstream process look like? And surprisingly, even in classrooms where they are not teachers with a ton of biomanufacturing expertise, students are able to piece a decent amount of this together just through their own independent research, which from a learning objective standpoint is one of the main goals of this program, is getting students used to doing, independent, research on their own. They're then moving through clinical trials and basically taking that information earlier about the product that they conceptualize or the problem and thinking where would we run our clinical trials? How many people would we need to be testing, that kind of thing. They're then moving into manufacturing at a very basic level. What kind of process would we look like? Would we be able to use single use or stainless steel and technology? How would we automate it? They then get into launch and distribution, which is the more creative and easy stuff for the students. How do we market it? How would we, brand it? Where would we advertise it? That kind of stuff. And they're also beginning to look at their overall target market and identify, okay, what are existing solutions that are out there for their product? How does their product stack up against the competition? What is the competitive landscape? Um, as I mentioned before, branding, advertising, that's really kind of cool to watch the students when they present these projects is, their name behind the product, the brand, who they partner with to pull it off. And really the most complicated part of the project that we have seen some teachers knock out of the park and some teachers kind of pivot away from. There is a business model and a financial, model that students are developing. Basically, what we do is we give them a whole lot of assumptions that if you're developing a vaccine, a dose is going to cost you this. If you're developing a gene therapy, a single dose may cost you this, with some other assumptions in there. And students are able to calculate in many cases, a ballpark. And again, it's not about getting the science and the numbers right, but really just giving them a perspective of what it would cost to produce that product, how much revenue they would make. There's some challenges with that thinking, though. I think we're very aware that, the pharma industry as a whole can get perceived as being money hungry. And so we don't really want that perception out there. And so we're not as focused on necessarily selling, the revenue piece of this and how much money these companies are making. The interesting thing for us in this curriculum, though, is we are building risk into this model. And so helping students understand that it's not that one biopharma drug that you're trying to make money off. You basically got to recoup the cost of those 10 products before it that have failed. And so that's all built into the financial model that the students are coming up with to understand why biopharmaceuticals are so expensive in the first place. And that's really one of the main learning objectives for this portion of the curriculum. That said, I think what we will say is we have seen teachers change the way that they handle the business model portion of the classroom completely. We are open to that in terms of how you think about this and how you respond to it. Not that you need to necessarily even figure that out as far as an RFI response, but just in the future, so that you're aware, it's not important that teachers implement this to the textbook how it is here. It's really important that they have the students going through the motions of developing a business model, whatever that feels right in that particular classroom. So they go through and develop that business model. Then they develop a pitch around it, and basically they put it out there to a panel of industry. And that's really been the fun part for all of us, is to be involved in those pitch days. I've been to a number down in North Carolina where I live. I've been to others with some of our sister institutes that have related programs, and they're just they're humbling to watch. It's cool to watch these students honestly get grilled by industry professionals, and that's kind of it's the beauty of how all this pulls together. And one of the things that we're looking for in coordinators to pull this off potentially is bringing the right industry partners together to help coach these students, provide a suitable pitch environment, that's real world, but easy enough on the students that they can kind of learn something from it. There's a rubric that goes along with that pitch, and so those judges are scoring them based on certain pieces of it. But that's the program in a nutshell. So like I said, it's not a dense curriculum. It's not about getting the science right. It's not about really trying to teach learning objectives detailed into around biopharmaceutical manufacturing. It's really around entrepreneurship, independent research, and teamwork is really what it boils down to. So it's a beautiful opportunity to build some kind of soft skills or professional skills in students. And Kathie, back to you.
Great. Thanks. All right, next slide. And again, keep going. It's kind of what John just stepped through. Great. Thank you, Megan. So coordinator responsibilities, John did mention the idea that, teams, if we went to an RFA and folks, put in for something that we would then fund at that point. We would be looking for a coordinator to have the following responsibilities. Right now, of course, we're just gathering information through this RFI. But coordinator responsibilities for biologic, program engagement and outreach, collaborate with high schools via events and visits, notifying NIIMBL of outreach activities, and using internal staff for consistent messaging, program coordination, tailoring delivery of those 7 core components that we talked about, like the industry day, the college day, the final pitches, business model, onboarding, training, material delivery, implementation, or determination. Who's going to be, doing that? And as John mentioned, teachers have been quite successful at teaching this, but in some instances, we have seen the coordinating organization doing some of that. Organizing industry college day tours, managing joint photo release forms, because any implementations that could theoretically happen, we would love to see the photos from that. There would be joint photo release forms. Data collection and sharing. Of course, metrics are key for us, and so sharing data with NIIMBL, what type of school is it going into, school count, student numbers, classroom type, partners format, lessons that the team may have learned, and media, all of those items being shared with NIIMBL. Next slide. So NIIMBL does provide support for biologic when it is implemented in other places. Printed materials, student workbooks, as John went through, also the instructor manual, the teacher workbook, the program manager guide, and other requested forms. There are several different types of forms that biologic can use. We don't see a lot of use from those other forms, but we could go through those with teams if interested. We also do provide either a mentoring or connection with other coordinators or teachers for guidance as teams find that helpful. Next slide. So for submission details, before we get into this specifically, we did want to just call out that this top paragraph at the top of this slide. So NIIMBL Biologic is designed for high school students, like period. That's what biologic was created for. But in addition to implementations focused on high school students, NIIMBL does welcome other innovative adaptations that extend its reach to other audiences. And we're looking for creativity from, folks who are responding to this RFI that might want to, have adaptations that align with the program's core mission of inspiring and preparing the next generation of students for the workforce through this, problem-based learning entrepreneurship program, but might be a slightly different take on what we're envisioning. We would encourage folks to go ahead and put those interesting additions into the RFI. But for the actual information that we're looking for, we would be looking for a description of the following. Who would you partner with in implementing biologic in your region? If there would be colleges involved, nonprofits, industry partners, as John mentioned, the right industry partners to partner with, what high schools. Would your NIIMBL biologic implementation, what would it appear like? What would it look like? What would the high level program elements be? What would its features be? What type of industry involvement would there be? Again, the setting, classroom, time of year, would it be a summer camp? Would it be an after school program? Because we have seen all of those different types. When would you ideally run it? Who's your specific target audience? For example, what are the anticipated academic backgrounds and levels of those students? How would participants be identified or recruited? And in what type of classrooms? How many individuals would you anticipate recruiting or reaching? And how would you manage logistics? If there was food involved for participants, transportation needed, industry recruitment for final pitches, how would any of that happen? And so we would be looking to you to provide some of those details in your submission. And so to that end, we do list out the submission process here. We would want responses to the RFI by September 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern time, 2 pages max. So a lot of information in a short amount of space. Late submissions cannot be considered. And again, the insights and information that we do get from the RFI are going to be able to help us inform strategic planning for future solicitations, possible RFA that could be launched in the future based off of this RFI. Wanted to also mention a few documents. John did mention these that we do provide and support in in a biologic, and specifically to the RFI, we have a few documents that we do provide. So you're able to appropriately respond. So you're able to take a look at the program manager playbook, the instructor guide, and the status tracker that the program manager uses. Also, by request, we can mail you a student workbook, provided we get that request by September 4th. And so those items would be available for you to review, so you could respond to the RFI appropriately. Next slide. So as far as submission details are concerned, in terms of organizational capabilities, we would like you to be able to include, like if you have an overview, you'd be able to provide of your capabilities, instrumentation, staffing, facilities that could support the development and implementation of the program. Just a rough order magnitude, cost estimation, budget that it would require for an implementation of biologic to happen. It would help us better understand the potential financial implications, and it's not binding in any way. And again, this RFI is not a solicitation for proposals for funding. We're just wanting to know a rough order magnitude, a budget. And again, encouragement for broad participation. If you've got a submission you'd like to put in, we're looking for a wide range of stakeholders who can, give us information. If you're coming from an academic institution, industry, nonprofit, whether you can offer comprehensive solutions or just maybe some specific things, we would love for you to reply to this RFI. And again, this RFI is a preliminary step, right, towards identifying potential innovative solutions and collaborations that can advance the field of biomanufacturing. And we really look forward to engaging with the community to gather this information from folks who submit. Next slide. So now's the time we're actually going to stop chatting here and be able to take a look at any questions in the chat. Megan, if you're able to pull those up, or John, I will look at them also. Or if anyone just wants to mention their questions, we have lots of time now to be able to address questions.
Yeah, we're a small enough group. I was going to say, feel free to just pipe up if you have questions.
Absolutely.
The other, Kathie, if you can go back to the other, just to answer or preempt one question, go back one, maybe two more slides. That's good. Nope, you can go. There you go. If you guys are interested and you start poking around with the program manager's playbook or the instructor's guide, I'm going to be blunt and say, don't bother asking us for the little ancillary forms that are linked in there. There's a lot of forms and documents that are referenced in those playbooks and those instructor guides, and they're not critical to understand. They're not critical to use to implement this. There's a lot of white label materials that were brought over when we created this program, from when we adapted it from Flex Factor, the original curriculum that it was based off. And they're not critical to probably evaluate whether you could pull this off or not. In many of the implementations that we've done, those forms haven't been used. Just flat out, they haven't been used. But those guidebooks and those playbooks are good to get a feel for what are the types of activities as a coordinating institution that you would be doing and you'd be responsible for. And the other thing that I'll just sort of preempt, it's probably stating the obvious, but please don't leave those student workbooks if you do request one with high school teachers or in a high school classroom. These are just evaluation copies for the purpose of this RFI, and that is the only purpose. So they should not be used.
Not seeing any questions yet in the chat, but again, you are welcome to throw questions out right now verbally or chat them in.
Yeah, this is Liana. No questions directly. I really appreciate you putting together the submission details primer. That's really going to help us focus on getting things down to the 2 pages that you most need.
Awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing folks' ideas and various implementation ideas that we may not even have thought of yet. So
yeah.
anyone else? All right. Well, not hearing any questions, we can probably give people time back. We will be putting this recording up online again and the slides. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know. And we would love to see your submissions on or by September 11th. Thanks very much, everyone.